Hi everyone, and welcome to a Mind Pod. This is episode 2 in the series At Peace With, and today I'm really blown away to have with me a very special lady. Katherine Cox Bonney is a lady that I met about a year and 4 months ago, and seeing her transformation has honestly been one of the most beautiful things that's happened in this current global situation that we've all been in. What I've seen change in her, um, and what I love about her is her ability to speak openly from the heart and with honesty and unbelievable clarity. And I just know that anyone listening today will get an awful lot from what Katherine has to say. Katherine now has her own coaching business. And Katherine, remind me of the website name.
At katherinebonnycoaching.com.
Thank you. And she's got some amazing programs running right now. So if you look her up on Facebook, you can also see some of that. And yeah, if you do go on her website, then please subscribe to her blog posts because they are next level. So I am so pleased to welcome Katherine today. And yes, as I said, episode 2. So at peace with suicidal thinking. Now, that might kind of seem like initially a sentence that doesn't quite fit together because it might seem, well, how can you have peace with something that's so unpeaceful? But the understanding that I share and the guests that come on share also is a spiritual understanding, a three principles based understanding. And having worked with clients myself who've tried to commit suicide, I know that this understanding makes a difference and just changes everything. And so, Katherine is going to share a bit of her story. And yeah, please kind of sit back and enjoy. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you, Nikki. Really appreciate what you said. And I'm delighted to be here and have a space to talk about something that isn't really ever talked about, isn't really looked at. Certainly, there's a huge push in the global community right now to look at the issues of mental health and um, offer support. But I really am passionate about looking in this direction and taking on suicide and suicidal thoughts from the 3P perspective, from the understanding of how life works. Because as someone who has lived with suicide and has had that as, basically the bosom companion of my entire life, um, I cannot even begin to describe the freedom that comes from making friends with that, what was that albatross around my neck? What was that absolutely um, just the most embarrassing and humiliating and shameful and just this experience that I have had in my life over and over and over again, and have never really been able to understand. And um, yeah, just the helplessness that comes from being someone who lives life with such passion, right? That I think is how I've been described since I was just a wee girl. People looked at me and just been like, Catherine lives so big. And what I know about those of us that live so big is that as high as we soar, we drop to some of the lowest depths that are simply unimaginable. And if there was an opportunity to see something about all of that, that made it just a little bit more gentle, a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
more peaceful, then I think that impact could really, really, really touch a lot of folks.
Yeah.
So,
Catherine,
um,
can you tell us like your first memories of suicide? Like,
sure. So,
yeah.
um, my experience, um, my childhood was not pleasant. I mean, I think that's probably the easiest way to say that. Um, the main contributors in my experience were very unhealthy. So my parents and my grandmother, who primarily raised me, they had a lot of unhealthy thinking that created this real sense of anxiety and distress. So as a child, I didn't actually know how to be at peace. I was constantly worrying, constantly trying to control, just amazingly unhappy. Um, and that was just the experience. So basically, from as early as I can remember, it was always just this real anxious, worry, concerned. Life was a problem, and something was always going to go wrong. So you have to be hyper vigilant and just always on top of things, which doesn't really make for a peaceful childhood. It's not a good way
No,
to start off.
definitely not.
And for me, by the time I got to junior high, circumstances that they were, I had gotten to this break point where I just couldn't live life the way that I was experiencing it. Like I had made a promise to myself that if I didn't escape by the time I was 13, that I was just going to die because I couldn't live the way that I was experiencing life. And then something cracked when I was in my eighth grade year. So I don't know what that equates to worldwide, but that's probably like 15, 14, somewhere in there.
Mhm.
So that was the first time I tried to kill myself. I took a bunch of pills and was really just done. I couldn't live any longer. Um, but you can't actually kill yourself just taking a handful of over the counter tablets. That doesn't have any influence. So it didn't, I don't know, it may have hurt my liver a little bit, but it didn't actually change anything.
I think though, I mean, we were just talking kind of a bit beforehand, and what you spoke about, which is something that isn't often spoken about, is the shame that you felt. You know, the shame that comes with suicidal thinking, suicidal ideation, making suicide plans, the meaning that we make, and not just with suicide, with anything, with anxiety or anxious feelings, depressive feelings, low mood, the meaning that we make in our minds of that.
Mhm.
Um,
So
it's
for me, I was a good Catholic girl, and what they taught us in the church is that suicide is a sin. So for me, not only was it um, something that you just don't do, but it was actually a sin against God. So I had really, really crossed a line as far as taking your own life because your life doesn't belong to you, it belongs to God. And so, who are you to uh, interfere with God's plans for you? And so there was definitely an undertone to that for me. Like, not only is it not okay to not be okay in society, not only is it, to show up with, perceived weaknesses as if the way that humans are designed is flawed, as if, you know, you're there's something inside of us that's broken that causes all of the negative behaviors, right? Like if I only was well or healthy, then I would be happy and productive all the time. But because I'm broken, because I've done something wrong, therefore I'm depressed and anxious and unhappy and, not able to participate. So that thinking that gets created, that we live into consciously, unconsciously, what's communicated in society, all of that gets built up in our own minds and just becomes so incredibly toxic, just painful. I mean, brutal, because that's not how we're designed. That's not how human beings function. I mean, that's not how we work. And there's nothing there. Like we've created all of that illusion that it means something, and it doesn't mean anything
So,
except that.
so when did you learn that? Like you were just saying, it doesn't mean anything. Like, what was the point at which you, like that is kind of like that big cloud of smoke that has the word suicide on it, and suddenly it just, when did that happen, and how did that happen?
Last week.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing to say, but you know, so here's what's true. What's true is that the second time I tried to kill myself was 2 years after the first attempt. And the next time after that was 3 years later. And so I have physically tried to kill myself 3 times. Not that I've had suicidal thoughts, just that the means by which I have chosen to try and kill myself have not been successful. So that is something that I have lived with. And it's been a dirty little secret that I have never talked about, that I have never explored, that I have never shared, that I've never really um, put out into the world. Because to me, I still believed that it was a product of my own inadequacy. Like I had a story about life and I was acting like it was true. I had made up a story that this was true about me. This is who I am, and so therefore, everything that showed up in the world out of that story, all of the negative things that occurred, all of the trials and tribulations, in my own mind were deserved, right? Because it matched the story that I believed about myself. And so it was only when I finally saw through the story. It was only when I finally got that it was literally all made up, that I made up that story based on a set of circumstances from a childish perspective, which is fair because I was a child when I made up the story.
Yeah.
But I lived as if it were real. Like I actually was, this is just a true thing about Catherine. And it's like, yeah, but it's not true. It was never true. It was simply the meaning that I made out of the circumstances. And so when did I finally see about suicide? When did I finally see that um, suicidal thoughts and um, the experience that we have of life when it gets to that break point when we simply can't live with our own thinking any longer, when we can't survive the hell that is our own minds. Like, that's not a bad thing. Like, that's not outside of the normal depths of humanity. Like, that doesn't actually happen to most people. The only difference is that most people don't act on it. Most people hear the thought and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's not me. That's totally out of the picture. That's not even me. This is just a really weird moment in my life, and so the thought just kind of goes. But
Yeah.
there's those of us that have that thought and experience that thought more often than others who really hit the depths and go to the lows. And that thought comes, and you think that it's the answer. You
Yeah.
think that it's the solution. You think that this is, a helping hand to show you, oh no, you're not really supposed to be alive, whatever story you make up about it. And what's true is it's just that you're at a very low place. And so the thoughts that come at a low place are going to be low level thoughts. And that if you give it a minute, if you just allow it to shift, if you were to see that thoughts by their own nature come and go, and that just because you have a thought doesn't mean you have to act on it. Just because it comes into your mind doesn't mean you have to do anything with it. It's a thought. That in itself is an incredible freedom. That's really what I see about thought and the nature of thought when it comes to suicide.
And it's so simple. You know, you think of all the people that really struggle with suicide thoughts, that think that it means something about them, that then seek out things in order to fix themselves, therapies or medications or whatever it is. When it just is so simple, it's just the meaning that we make of it. Like, if I have the thought, and this might seem like I'm trivializing it, but it just really is like this. If I have the thought, oh, I'd love a cup of tea, I don't make any meaning out of that thought. I don't think, oh, Nikki, like you've had 3 cups of tea already. Like you really should cut back on the tea because maybe you're a bit addicted to tea. Maybe there's something wrong with you because you think about tea a lot. And I wonder if other people think about tea. Like, I just don't. I don't. And then, like you say, people in a low mood have low mood thinking, and people all across the world have those thoughts. It's just sometimes we make no meaning of it, and sometimes we do. And if people could just see that we're not meant to make meaning of it, that that thought doesn't mean anything about us, like think of all the lives that could be saved if people just knew that. If people just knew that it passes. Like we hear in the news all the time of, like it just seems to be everywhere. Like I know we spoke about this and it does seem to be everywhere about young people, committing suicide because it looks to them like you say, like that's the solution to the current situation. If only people could see that the thinking that we have doesn't define us. We are not what we think. We're more than that.
For me, it's even a step farther, which is like those thoughts come and go, and whether or not you have them is not an indication of anything. It doesn't say a thing. It doesn't reflect who you are. It doesn't, it doesn't point to the content of your character. It doesn't define your value. It doesn't, indicate anything about you as a person. Because we take suicide so personally, like as if that thought was suddenly given to us because we're struggling and clearly we can't handle life. Clearly we're incapable. Clearly there's something wrong with us. Clearly we're broken. So as someone who, I mean, I looked it up, right? Because it's not like that thought is just a part of me. And I have fought against that thought for so long. I have made it mean so much in my world. I've put it on a pedestal and almost started worshiping it to some degree because it was so central to my identity of what I thought life meant and who I thought I was. I mean, the last time I had that thought was 15 months ago. 15 months ago. 15 months ago, I'd already met you. I had already started the training to be a coach in this understanding. I had already had some of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. I have 3 children, right? My son is 3 years old. So he was, 18 months old at the time. I have a gorgeous husband. I have a beautiful family. I mean, it's just,
But that's the thing, Catherine, isn't it? It doesn't mean anything.
every-
Like, it doesn't matter how successful you are, it doesn't matter how beautiful you are, it doesn't matter how clever you are. Like, these thoughts come to us.
yes, they do. They do. And thankfully, I had the clarity to know, oh, look, there's the suicide thought again.
Yeah.
Oh, I just walked in the door. There it is. But instead of like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? Oh my gosh, what does it say about me? Oh my gosh, I must be screwing up again because this has come back. And so there must be a problem. And this time I got to see it from a new place, from a new understanding, which is, oh, look, there's a thought. Yeah. Wait 5 minutes, there's another one. So for me, you know, when that thought walks back in the door, I can say, hey, there's my old friend. There's that thought that I haven't seen in a while. Wow, I must be really, really low right now. I'm going to go do something that is enjoyable for me. I'm just going to shut it down and go enjoy my life because right now my thinking's not so great. So I'm going to take a break until my thinking shifts around until it comes back to the space of neutral, which is where we always want to be, to that space of connection where we know that we are part of something so much greater than us. Like our thinking, like the way that it looks moment to moment. Connection is the beauty that is being human.
That's just perfectly beautiful. So, just the kind of question that's like coming to my mind is, so I've got a clear picture of what Catherine thought about Catherine. Like, and I'm thinking of when Catherine was 14 and the first suicide attempt. It was about 13, 14, right?
Mhm.
And then probably even up to, I don't know, 13, 14 months ago. So who is who is Catherine now? Like, what does Catherine know about Catherine that she didn't know about back then?
So last week was my 25-year high school reunion. And my second suicide attempt was during my freshman year. So I was that girl that tried to kill herself. And I had so much thought about that. Like I had made such a story about that and had really judged myself so harshly and was absolutely certain, and the judgment was that I wasn't good enough. Like I wasn't fit company, that I wasn't on the same level, that I wasn't that I didn't belong.
Yeah.
That was the message that I got. That was the story I made up. And that is the life that I've created for myself. I lived into that as if it was true for years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that was what I saw in the circumstance. And that was the story that I created. And that was the world that I lived into. And it was a year ago that I saw that it was just something that I had made up. And so the whole world came crashing down. And I was like, oh, I have these circumstances. I was a child. I was struggling so hard for so many reasons. And then I made up a story about it. And then I pretended like that story was true for 20 odd years. Right? Like that has been how I have experienced life. So up until last year when I saw it. And then the story fell, and it was like, okay, I see that's not real. Right? Not a bad thing. But what was true about it is that it had only changed in my head. So that's great, but we're not designed to live in our heads. We're designed to live in life. Like we're meant to get out and interact with people and do stuff and get involved and live. And so come around to this year, and it's my 25-year reunion, and I'm now coming face to face with the people that I was certain had this judgment of me. I was so sure that they thought that the things that I believed about myself were what they thought.
Mhm.
So, in a non-COVID world, in a non-pandemic world, I totally would have gone to my reunion and I would have snuck in the back door and I would have circled the outside to those few people that are meaningful to me. And
Yeah.
I would have made like all of the people that I was sure would not be kind to me based on, behaviors, thoughts, and ideas that are so old, right? Like, but that's just how we do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a COVID world. So my 25th high school reunion was a Zoom call.
You can't sneak him round the back.
No sneaking around anywhere, no low profiles at all. And then on top of that, they called on me to go second. So it was like everyone was still paying attention because we'd all just logged on. And so as I get called on, I'm sitting there and this thought goes through my mind, which is this is the high school nightmare. Only I'm not naked walking the halls. Staring right at me. so so I show up to the call and I know what I know. And I've seen what I've seen. And I'm shaking, like physically shaking.
Mhm.
Yep. And I say, I gotta be really honest. It sucked. I was only there for 2 years and then I dropped out because it was so painful. It was so hard. And seeing all of you is just terrifying to me because it just brings back all the things that I've not really ever looked at or dealt with or I really need.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, but I'm here. And I'm looking at all of you, and what I see is just a bunch of old people. It's not even who you are. 25 years after we graduated high school, you're all a bunch of old people. But more so, I look again and I see my friends I went to high school with. And I look at your individual faces, and I can remember one memory that just pops to mind for every single one of you. Something that makes me smile and just like lightens me up. So, I'm here and I'm really glad to be here with you. I'm glad to see you.
Wow.
It's really beautiful stage for connection, right? Like this real beautiful authenticity for this gorgeous call that we had, where people were able to kind of share from a deeper place and show up more authentically with
Yeah.
permission. And then after that, we've been emailing, and I really got to share with them how healing that call was for me. Because it's like not only did the story I create fall away because it was just made of thought, but then I got out in the arena and I stepped onto the field of life and I held up a flag and I said, "Hey, anybody see this? Anybody?" The world was like, "No, nope, nope. That's just your imagination, Catherine. Not only do we not see what you're pointing at, but we don't actually think anything like it. In fact,
Yeah.
we're happy to see you and you belong to us. And we love you. So come back again because this is your home and this is where you're wanted." So it was just surreal how when you finally look, right, shine a light in the darkness, finally like get brave and take on that thing that is so scary and so unbelievably paralyzing. There's nothing there. When that thought falls away, there really is nothing there except the you that's always been, the
Yeah.
joyous, gorgeous, beautiful human being that's just living life. And
That's that's one heck of a journey from 14-year-old Catherine. Like I just have this picture in my head of 14-year-old Catherine and Catherine today. And just like it's like they're two different people. I can't see 14-year-old Catherine. I hear her when you talk about her, but I can't see her today when you show up in the world that the way you show up. I'm actually just a little bit blown away, and I'm so incredibly grateful. Um, so incredibly grateful. Thank you so much, Catherine, for taking the time to share with us today and for speaking so honestly and authentically. So, yeah, thank you so, so much.
thank you so much for having me. And thank you for really just opening the door to the conversations that are really required, what's needed in life.
Yeah, yeah, they really are. So, thank you and lots of love. And thank you to everyone listening. And we'll see you next week. Take care.